think we will pick up where we left off with members speaking on the motion. Call on the Honorable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I can see it in your eyes that you despise the same old lies that you heard the night before. Madam Speaker, that was one of the top songs of 1967 that the Honorable Leader of the Opposition gave a quote from in his opening speech. And it was something that was said back in 1967, before I was born. So just out of morbid curiosity, I just went to see what the world was like in 1967. And that was one of the top songs for that year. And the line, I'll repeat it again for you, for the member for West Bay West. It says, I can see it in your eyes that you despise the same old lies that you heard the night before. That top song, Madam Speaker, was done by Nancy Sinatra and Frank Sinatra. And the name of that song, Madam Speaker, is Something Stupid. That was the name of that song. Madam Speaker, I really didn't plan on speaking on this motion. And the only reason I'm actually speaking on it, since I was called out during the Honorable Leader of the Opposition contribution with regards to something that I said. And I couldn't help, Madam Speaker, just for those who would have probably missed it. I have the answers here. And it says, during his contribution, of course, we have heard too from the Minister of Finance, who has recently published the second quarter results. He spoke of the higher than expected revenues achieved, which included motor vehicle charges that were 5.3 million greater than budgeted due to high volume of vehicle imports. And so we see somewhat of a contradiction here between what the ministry is saying with regards to the continuing increases and of import duties. At that point, Madam Speaker, members may recall that I interjected on a point of order to determine when and where that was said. Madam Speaker, I went back and I looked at actually what was gazetted by the government for the second quarter. And I just want to make a note that as per the results that were gazetted, and again, this is in the public domain, for the period 1st of January 2022 to the 3rd of January 2022, the total amount of money collected on motor vehicle duty, Madam Speaker, was $11,789,000 against a budget of $12,692,000. In short, Madam Speaker, the government revenues at the end of the second quarter was actually $903,000 below budget, and not, as it says here, that it was 5.3 million greater than budgeted due to the high volume of vehicle imports. Madam Speaker, I accept that it could have been a possibility that maybe it was the third quarter results that we were probably looking at And easily anyone could have made a mistake, because sometimes when you do get up here to speak, I can tell people many times, I too get butterflies when I'm speaking. Madam Speaker, this morning, I went through a marathon session of tabling a lot of reports, including in what I tabled, Madam Speaker, was also the unaudited quarterly financial report for the period ending 30th of September. And Madam Speaker, I can say to you that at the end of, for the period 1st of January 2022 to 30th of September 2022, the total amount collected on motor vehicle duty was $16,526,000, and the budget at that time, when we did it, Madam Speaker, was $19,037,000. In short, Madam Speaker, at the end of the 9 months of this government administration, the total amount that government collected on vehicle revenue were more than 2.5 million below what was budgeted. Again, Madam Speaker, I say, it is not, and I went through, we looked at the press releases, we looked at what went out, and I can see again where this 5.3 million greater than budget number came from. Madam Speaker, being as curious as I am, I even went out and I noticed that there was an article in today's Compass for December 7th that says government maintains higher fiscal surplus in third quarter. And under the heading that says deal with higher revenues and savings, it says, this is from the Cayman Compass, coercive revenues recorded for the period was 44.4 million ahead of budget and 23.9 million higher than during the same period in 2021. It goes on to say, Madam Speaker, a 14.9% increase in the population to 81,700 between the 2021 census and the third quarter of this year brought the government a 7.6 million higher windfall in motor vehicle charges in the third quarter as more cars were imported. You see, Madam Speaker, it is this kind of reporting, this kind of stuff that when it goes out in the public domain, and this is why it is important for us and for everyone in this house to not depend on every single thing that we read sometimes. We go through and we gazette these information, and this information is very detailed in what it is, and I do not understand how between a speech I gave yesterday morning at the CEPA conference versus the third quarter results being back and forth and everything else in between. But again, Madam Speaker, it is important that the public avail themselves of the resources that the government has, of what we put in the public domain, so that they are not misled, and you don't have to go through. Now, normally I would probably get somebody to write the author and tell him that this is incorrect and all that kind of stuff, but I think by now, the people of the Cayman Islands is wise enough to understand what it is that they read and know when it is that they can make sense from anything else. Madam Speaker, I thoroughly enjoyed listening to the contribution of my good friend from Red Bay. Madam Speaker, I've said it in this house before. I've said it publicly that having been first elected, the one politician that I studied the most, watched the style the most, and in essence learned the most from, in some extent, of maneuvering inside this honorable house, is the member from Red Bay. Anyone, and I can tell you, Madam Speaker, as a student of political science, you can put the member of Red Bay on the world stage, and he would represent the Cayman Islands very well. You have to give Jack his jacket at the end of the day, and you cannot say that he has not attained certain political acumen, having been, as he stated, elected 6 times continuously. He is, by all means, a formidable politician, and a formidable adversary. And I can tell you, I enjoyed my time in opposition when he was on the other side. No worry, man. No worry. Come in. The payment come in. Madam Speaker, the first political lesson I got was, ironically, the member was sitting in the same seat that I used to sit in. It was the strategic policy statement for the 2017, after the 2017 election. And to the government's credit, as the Premier stated then, it was his last term as Premier, and he intended to be bold, and he laid out the government's plan for his government plan for the next 3 years. And I can say, Madam Speaker, that my colleagues at the time in opposition, we were inspired. We got up, we thanked him for his service, and we wished him all the best in terms of achieving what he set out to do. Because at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, despite whatever political differences there are, I can honestly say that I don't believe any member of this honorable House, even those opposite, would want to see this government or any government fail. Yes, their job is to keep the government in check. Yes, their job is to make sure they hold us accountable, and that is part of the democratic process. And having presented a strategic policy statement, and we wished them all the best, he proceeded to put a political beating on all of us in opposition. And his exact words at the end was something along the lines, if we want, our job is not to agree with the government. Our job is to oppose the government, offer alternatives, and if you want to agree with the government, come sit and decide. I remember at that time, a colleague from Savannah said to me, was that necessary? That was Mr. Tony Eden at the time. I said to Mr. Eden, yes, it was very necessary. The Premier reminded us of the job and the importance that the opposition play in our democracy. And I can honestly say, Madam Speaker, I expect nothing less from the opposition in terms of what it is that they were going to bring. Madam Speaker, I will accept that the members opposite have more years of experience in government than I do, having only been on the government side now for around 19 months. But equally, Madam Speaker, except for the member for Red Bay and the member for Cayman, Brack, West and Little Cayman, I can say that while the members opposite may have more experience being on the government side, I have more experience being on the opposition side. And, Madam Speaker, with that said, I look back at my own track record here, which I received, which was form of my manifesto, and I looked at the 2017-2018 session and the 2018-2019 session, with pretty much, Madam Speaker, my first, they're about 2 years. During that period of time, Madam Speaker, I brought 13 motions. 13. That's just me. 1-3. 13. During the same period of time, Madam Speaker, when I look at the level of motions coming from the opposite side, I can recall the music and dancing one, I can recall the stamp duty one, and this traffic motion. 3. You get your time and wrap up. 3 motions, Madam Speaker. So, 13 motions from me and me alone in the same period of time versus 3 opposite. Music and dancing, traffic, and the stamp duty one, which the government accepted the stamp duty one and the music one. Madam Speaker, I say that to say this. In total, when I look back at the amount of motions that I brought, to the government's credit, and again, I'll give Jack his jacket, the vast majority of the motions I brought in opposition was accepted by the government. Of course, many of them didn't go anywhere. They did say they would consider it, they considered it, and they did nothing. But, Madam Speaker, here's what experience have taught me being on the opposition bench. I can honestly say that when I brought a motion, my good friend from Bordentown East will be one of the first persons I call, say, John, I bring in a motion and so. Speak to your guys, them, and see if they'll support it for me. Sometimes, Madam Speaker, the member from Prospect who was previously here, Mr. Harris, who was the government whip, I call him up, I say, Austin, I need a favor from you. I want to do this, can you help me? And even sometimes, Madam Speaker, I will tell you, the government bench was always accommodating on different motions. I can see the member for Cayman, Black West, and Little Cayman was always a gentleman whenever you want something. And I can say the same of the member for Georgetown South, is that you go around and you go through the process of trying to drum up support, because at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, sitting on the opposition bench, being in the minority, you cannot get anything done without the support of the government members. And at that time, Madam Speaker, it's not as if though they weren't going to vote this way and this way and this way. There was a pack, there was a group. Whatever one go, the rest of them are going that way. That's the way politics is. But it requires, Madam Speaker, the ability to reach across the aisle and say, I am doing this, I want to get this done. When I look at this motion that was brought, Madam Speaker, not one iota of consultation, at least for me, where someone would have come and say, you know, Chris, DP, whatever, I want to do this, we recognize this is an issue. What can we do to work with you guys with it? Zero zilch nada. I listened to the opening contribution. I said, okay, maybe everybody has been busy and everything else. And it is one that just started that same adversarial style of politics, which is fine, I don't mind it. But it is not one or an approach that says, let us work together. Let us recognize that this is a problem. Madam Speaker, the Premier, and I will say this much, got up and he took responsibility for the traffic situation, even though he himself was a victim and stuck in it the night, as do I and many other members. But the truth of the fact is, Madam Speaker, what happened in Georgetown that Friday night, that one night that triggered this motion, is what those of us in the Eastern District have to live with almost every single day. We have children doing homework in cars on the way down in the morning because their parents have to get them up so early. Yeah. Madam Speaker, we are about improving people's quality of lives. There are at least 10,000 employees that are affected in the Eastern District. And when you take an average hourly salary, you multiply that by 5, you multiply that by 52, we are talking about, in a service-based economy, a problem that runs anywhere from $50 to $100 million a year in lost productivity of people being stuck in traffic. This is not the quality of life we want for nobody. Madam Speaker, when you look at the definition of health, as per the World Health Organization, it says a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just the absence of diseases and infirmity. Madam Speaker, it is that mental and social well-being that a lot of our people are struggling with and dealing with. My family is not immune. None of my colleagues here is immune. But I can say this much, Madam Speaker, not to pick on people in Georgetown Central, Georgetown North, Georgetown West, and Georgetown East, who's already in Georgetown, that don't have to come from so far. The member from East End, Madam Speaker, the member from North Side, the time of the mornings in which they leave out and be stuck in traffic. 5 o'clock for the Minister North Side, always one of the first persons in. Because he point blank, if he doesn't leave Northside from 5 o'clock, he's not going to get out here. And then worse for him, if he decides when we do run here late at night at Parliament, sometime to 10, 11 o'clock at night, by the time he reach home, turn around 2 times and come back, I'm even worried about his own health for the hours that he keeps. But you know what, Madam Speaker? Many Caymanian families go through the same thing every day. And they get up and they do it. When we started out, Madam Speaker, we decided we didn't just want to focus on the economic metrics. We wanted to focus on the quality of life metrics also. It requires a tectonic shift, a cultural shift in the way we do business here in the Cayman Islands. And Madam Speaker, there is right. I can say the member for Red Bay was right in certain aspect. That we have to have the difficult conversation with regards to building heights, development, and everything else. This is a problem that requires a holistic solution. It is not going to be a band-aid, a one-size-fits-all, because people can talk about cars all you want. At the end of the day, you could own 5 cars, you can only drive 1. The issue isn't just about the amount of cars. It's about, one, the amount of people on the road at the same time is also what generates traffic. We have people converging literally. We saw the report from NRA into one section. Everybody converging on Georgetown. There are some government services that are not essential to the public in terms of public facing. That could have been in other parts of the island, start moving traffic elsewhere. These are the kind of things that are required. So it is not going to be a situation of just jumping up. And you know, Madam Speaker, the Premier raised the point. When you look at the report that was done from June 2020, I can tell you now, having sat in the government, we have to learn to walk and chew gum. It can't be where everybody's focused on one thing. And I can say, as I say to some people sometimes, I just have to trust the minister that they have done the necessary work, the team have done the necessary work. Because if we're going to try and do every single thing that every minister does, you will never get anything done. This is not what governance is about. This is not what government is about. And I can tell you, Madam Speaker, yes, the opposition have their job to do. And I can equally say to anyone publicly that one of the first persons who said to me after being sworn in as a minister of government, Chris, it's important to me that the country does well. If you need advice, need anything, pick up the phone and call me. That was the member from Red Bay, Madam Speaker. That's what he said to me. Pick up the phone and call me anytime. I recognize, Madam Speaker, that their job is to keep the government accountable. And in truth of the fact, Madam Speaker, I must say, when they do come, it actually gives us a chance to even stop our own issues we have on this side and unite us. So they are actually doing the country a favor sometimes in terms of what it is that they do, because at the end of the day, Madam Speaker, this is still an adversarial system. This is not a system for the weak of heart. Democracy is still about competing ideas, competing priorities, competing for resources. There are things I want to get done. There are things the Minister of Tourism want to get done. There are things the Minister of Planning want to get done. And I can tell you, it is an argument as to who can get the limited resources. Madam Speaker, we have problems here in Cayman. I don't want you to think about this. Earlier today, I gave out the Moody's Investors rating. The Cayman Islands has the same rating as the United Kingdom. We are 3 notches from the top of the list. But most importantly, Madam Speaker, when you look at some of the other countries that we are in front of, these are countries that can go in a back room and print money. Madam Speaker, we do not have that ability. Yet the mighty United States, who can go inside and print money left, right, and center, still have a ton load of domestic problems. In the last 2 years, Madam Speaker, the total amount of US dollars in circulation went from 4 trillion to 20 trillion, $16 trillion increase. Printing money. And their people still have problems. New York still have traffic. LA still have traffic. The bottom line and the point I'm making, Madam Speaker, you cannot spend your way out of this problem. It's going to require a cultural shift in the way in which we do things. It's going to require either different working hours, changing where it is that people go to school, what time people go to school, what time people go to work. It's going to require a holistic approach. And Madam Speaker, I can tell you, every single member in this house is faced with traffic, one way or the other. Because even just to get around town itself is a problem in the middle of the day. Even on a Saturday, you can't even move in town. It is a problem. So I'm not going to sit down and tell anybody that there's going to be a silver bullet, there's going to be a magic approach. But the approach that it will carry is the political will to get it done for our people. That's right. And if we're going to sit down inside here and just trying to score brownie points, it is not going to work. Earlier on, the minister was criticized for the roads that he was doing and this and that he's doing, and I'm million and one stuff. And I'm sitting down and I'm saying to myself, well, where did he get all that money from? You know, I'm running through the numbers there, I'm thinking of how many 11.5s or Section 12s we did. But then, Madam Speaker, it hit me when I remember an article that was, and Chris, this is the speaker here and one to the honorable leader of the opposition there from, because I'm just going to read from it a little bit. You want a copy too? I got extra one. This was an article, Madam Speaker, from Cayman News Service, and after the last article where the numbers was off, I decided to try a different news service, you know. And it basically says the OAG finds pre-election abuse of public cash. And it reads, Madam Speaker, the Office of the Auditor General noted an, quote-unquote, unusual spike in spending by the National Roads Authority during the 2 months before the 2021 general election. More than 11 million was spent between the announcement of the early election and the day of the vote. Auditor General Sue Spinspear and her team found during their audit of the NRA. And she said this could indicate political abuse of public funds during the election campaign. And it goes on to say expenditure in those 8 weeks amounted to 88% of the road budget for the first 4 months of 2021. You know the report? I read it again for you. She says, expenditure in those 8 weeks amounted to 88% of the road budget for the first 4 months of 2021. And she also goes on to say, later on, this was not the first time that a PPM-led administration had upped spending on roads prior to elections. Winspear said that during the course of the NRA audit, our team looked at the previous pre-election period in 2017 and noted a surge in road construction spending then as well. And of course it's good politics. That's why we're sitting here, because we campaign on that kind of behavior. But listen, Madam Speaker, I understand the politics of what it is that we do sometimes in this house. I can honestly say that when I first got elected in 2017, I met with NRA, and they basically said to me that I could get 4 roads done in my district, and they gave me the list of all the roads, the PSI rating, and all the different stuff that needed to be fixed. 4 roads I had for 2017, 4 roads I had for 2018, 4 roads I had for 2019, 4 roads I had for 2020. Madam Speaker, I didn't get one. In 2021, I went from 17 to 20. In 2021, I called the minister, he took my call, and I can honestly say this about the member for Georgetown North. He takes calls and he returns call. I call him and I beg him. I say, man, listen, I need this road. The people are under pressure on me. Can you do this for me? And he did the best that he could, and I got that one road. So 16 roads in my constituent that my people, that I should have gotten for 4 years. 16. My constituents had to get up and traverse those roads, damage their cars, and even I myself, Madam Speaker, having to go out and campaign on many of those roads that needed fixing, and only to be faced with, boy, Chris, you couldn't do nothing for me. You couldn't get nothing done. So, Madam Speaker, you cannot expect, for those of us in the Eastern Districts, that at least I can speak for Boddington West, that was neglected. I cannot now go to my people who have been sitting on very bad roads for the past 4 years that I was elected and say to them, I can't get your road fixed when I'm sitting here as a Deputy Premier and Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, what the Minister did, the Minister of Planning did, was gave us and gave the people of Boddington West and other districts in the Eastern District that needed that assistance that was ignored for so long. And I tell you what, I want to publicly thank him for doing that for my constituents. I want to thank him. And you know, Madam Speaker, I like Minister Jay from Planning. He's a hard-working minister. And sometimes Jay can be Jay. And sometimes after some meetings, I will call him, and he said to me, DP, I know you're going to say to me, I was too hard, I was too strong. I said, Jay, when you're a hammer, everything look like a nail. But you know what? That is the diversity of this group. This is not a group of follow the leader type stuff. This is a group of independent-minded people. And as I said before, Madam Speaker, democracy is still about having differences, having disagreement, having discord, having dissent. But what it says is through debate, through discussion, through dialogue, we find consensus. This is what politics is about. It's about finding consensus. I can tell you, I have made a public statement in terms of where my preference of building height is. I caveat it by saying this is my personal opinion. Do other of my colleagues share the same? No. But this is what it is about. This is what democracy is about. It's about ideas. This is what we do here. We debate ideas. And I can honestly say, Madam Speaker, if the government felt on this side that this was a genuine motion that was interested in solving the traffic, we would have accepted it. But I had my doubts from the way the motion was written. I had my doubts with the timing, and those doubts were removed when the move of the motion that started out and that started throwing licks on the government. I will confirm. Thank you, Premier. Madam Speaker, I had over 20-something motions in the last, when I was in opposition, that I brought during my time. Over more than 20. And that's just what I brought. That don't include what I seconded. And Madam Speaker, one of the reasons why I always bring motions is it gave me the last chance to talk. As the mover, you get to speak first. Everyone gets to speak. And if you don't like what anyone says on closing, you get up. And as the former member from Eastern used to say, beat man. You know, that has always been the risk. No, what is the expression? People know what that means in the sense it's just political jargon for you get up and you throw political licks. That's really what it means. But, Madam Speaker, this is not the kind of politics we want at this stage in our development. As I said before when I was tabling the Moody's report, one of the things that the Cayman Islands got very high points for was its political stability and political consensus. I am not going to sit back and say to anyone that I believe that the honored leader of the opposition brought this with any ill will or anything like that. He's doing his job to make sure the government makes this a priority, because that's also part of it too. You bring it just to put it on the government radar to say, listen, we have registered it, you better do something about it, because come re-election time, we're going to hold this against you. That's part of the politics. But I can tell you, Madam Speaker, as a member, first and foremost, of Bodentown West, the loss of productivity, the loss of quality of life for my people requires a fix. Now, Madam Speaker, many people believe that creating the East-West arterial is going to be the end-all, be-all. I am fully supportive of the East-West arterial. For the simple fact, Madam Speaker, when you look at the 2021 results, and even since then the change in population demographics, once you cross Savannah Meadows, there is one single road connecting the entire Eastern District. And if there's one traffic accident, or even going back to Hurricane Ivan, when that with that club there that went out in the middle of the road, I forgot it. Oh. Yeah, Cove. What was that again? Mariners Cove. The entire Eastern District was cut off. The East-West arterial, Madam Speaker, was actually gazetted by then Gilbert McLean, recognizing that the Eastern District needed another avenue to ensure that we can move in any emergencies or anything, that the people are not left stranded. But, Madam Speaker, I can also say to people equally, I want the environmental impact, the EIA done. For the simple fact, Madam Speaker, that proposed road is going to be running behind my district of Bodentown West. And you know what, Madam Speaker? That area is also the runoff for my area. I have areas already in Northward because of a development that has happened across from them. That is now every time rainfall, there's a flooding issue. Because where the water would naturally run, it is now being back, and people's homes are being flooded. I cannot sit down and trade people to say, yes, I'm going to build a road to get you into town quicker. But guess what? Every single time the hurricane season come around or heavy rains come, I'm going to be one of the houses flooded. It can't be a situation where you get a road, but it comes at the risk of your house being flooded. That is not responsible, Madam Speaker. You understand? I can tell you in Bodentown West, we go from 6 feet above sea level to 62 feet above sea level. But I know where the water runs. And when I met with NRA and they showed me where the road was, and I saw where it was, and I saw the water, I'm like, hold on, back up, back up, back up. You ain't flooding out my people. Because I can guarantee you one thing. If their house get flooded out, they may forgive me for traffic. They may forgive me for being stuck and being in traffic. But when you're talking about the one asset that people spend their most money on, the person's castle, I am not going to run the risk of their homes being flooded just to get a road in. That would be highly irresponsible. But, Madam Speaker, the minister has been working on getting the roads done. The Premier is pushing his people to get the EIA done. And simultaneously, Minister of Transport, Minister Bryan, is working on getting a solution to a public transport system. In short, Madam Speaker, these initiatives are being done simultaneously. These initiatives tell the country that this government can walk and chew gum. It's not a situation of having a report sitting there, but because of COVID, you couldn't do anything with it. You have to multitask. That's what it is. That's what it comes down to. But if anyone believes that the members on this side who is most affected by traffic, that this is not a priority for us, if you want to shut down a caucus meeting or something, you bring up traffic. The member for Savannah, the member for East End, the member for Bodentown East, the member for North Side, the member for Prospect, and there you say the member for Red Bay too. Because they bottleneck right in Red Bay is where all the bottleneck is. And of course, my people. We're talking tens of thousands of families being affected in terms of lost productivity and quality of life. Madam Speaker, work is being done. And I can tell you, it is a major priority for this government. And today is the first time I saw this report that was being tabled. But the truth of the fact is, Madam Speaker, many of the assumptions, when the data assumptions that would have gone into this report would have been materially changed. The initial results, Madam Speaker, that have been provided to me, and to use a line, been reliably informed, coming out of the labor force survey at the end of September, is a population of 81,700. When we did the census last October, Madam Speaker, we were at 71,105. In less than a year, our population increased by 14.9%. Madam Speaker, sitting on the opposite side, I remember when we were looking at tourism and different stuff. At that time, we had roughly 300 properties that was in the Airbnb pool. Today, it is almost 1,600. These were properties that were previously inside the domestic rental market. Now they're outside of the domestic rental market, and properties that were once renting for $1,800 to $2,000 is now $4,000 and $5,000, simply from supply going down and demand going up. There are many things that we have to work on, Madam Speaker. But you know what, Madam Speaker? I can say this. This government does not have a monopoly on the solutions, nor does the previous government and the members of the opposition have a monopoly on solutions. I can go further to say that the solutions of this country is not just from inside this house. It doesn't have to come from members in this house. We have a lot of bright and intelligent people. Some are new Caymanians, indigenous Caymanians, and some will just call it the Cayman Islands home. People who have come from countries see some of the challenges that they have and what needs to be done. But Madam Speaker, at the same time, we're also recovering from COVID. I would love to see that the government has an ability, a printing machine in the back to go and print money, that we can just throw out the solution. But that will also be irresponsible. We still have families, we still have industries that are still recovering. Tourism is still not back to where it's at. The Minister for Social Development, you saw earlier this year where he brought the legislation to start to even improve the way in which we offer assistance to our people. Again, we still have limited resources. We have seen the impact of inflation and what it is doing to the quality of our people's lives. These are real problems. The traffic is one. Inflation is one. Universal health care coverage is one. Crime is on the rise. I mean, we have genuine problems in this country. And Madam Speaker, the members opposite have too much experience, have been elected too long, and have enough knowledge to know that if there's anything the members on this side have been accommodating. And if you want to bring a motion that can pass, we have no issues of sitting with you, working with you, because, Madam Speaker, the irony of this, the very report that they're talking about today, the former leader of opposition filed a similar motion and withdraw his motion to give at the time the member of Prospect the ability to bring this motion to deal with this. Why? We think it would have been better for the government to have brought it, because if anyone who could have had the resources and the ability to get this done would have been a member of the government as opposed to a member of the opposition. That is cooperation. That's what it takes. Madam Speaker, we have many in the last go-around, many meetings in the committee room, sorting out some of the differences that is not discussed on this floor. This is what cooperation is about. We are not even at the halfway mark. I expect at some point, 12, 18 months before the next election, I expect the opposition to ramp up and to start throwing licks. I expect that. But for right now, Madam Speaker, it is about representing our people, working together, and finding a solution. When you look at the qualification, Madam Speaker, of even the very leader of the opposition, this is a former managing partner of a big four accounting firm, the type of firm that government hires and other companies hire to find solutions for them. This is the caliber of people we have. But if we want something done, let us work together. This is not a Boddington West problem, it's not a Newland problem, it's not a Prospect problem, it's not a Savannah problem, it's a Cayman Islands problem. And that's what we need to focus on. So, Madam Speaker, I would have loved to have been proven wrong and say that this motion was one that was meant to really kickstart us really moving this as a priority. I would have loved to have said that. But I knew the night when the Premier got up and took responsibility, I said he just opened a political door. But you know what, Madam Speaker? That's what leadership is. Someone has to take responsibility. Yes, it was the commissioner that ordered the closed road. Yes, there were 16 accidents at the same time. Yes, there were other people doing or organizing the Paris Week activity, not members of the elected government. But at the end of the day, the country still needed someone to say, you know what? This is wrong, it's a problem that needs to be fixed, and there's nobody better placed to do it than the Premier himself. So, Madam Speaker, I can say to my members opposite, the Minister of Transport, I know, has offered invitations in terms of things, some of the stuff that's being worked on. I know the Minister of Planning is one that talks very regularly with members opposite. And if they're really and truly serious of us finding a way to deal with this, the government is more than willing to work with members opposite. But what we're not going to do, Madam Speaker, is play politics with this very important issue that is affecting and impacting the quality of people's lives, their mental state, and their social state. It's too far from the next election to be going there. You can hold the government account. You can criticize the government and expect nothing less. That is the job of the opposition within our democracy. But if it's just about scoring points, I'm sorry. There are far more three-pointers on this side, like you shoot a three-pointer, than on the other side. We are willing to work with any member opposite if they're genuinely, seriously about the problems. Maybe the one good thing that came out of the traffic jam in Georgetown and the Premier taking responsibility for it is that it created the opportunity for us to ventilate many of these issues. But also, the wider population got an opportunity to see what the people in my district of Boddington West and the entire eastern districts deal with on a daily basis. Madam Speaker, as I close, and there was another song, which is a top song in 1967, that would have given me a real good opportunity to really solidify what it is I want. But you know what, Madam Speaker? Christmas is nearing. I know what it is like to be on that side. And like I said, many members on that side extended a courtesy to me. And I am not a forgetful person. Because like I said, the 19 motions that I got passed or thereabouts in the last administration could not have been done without the cooperation of the government. I have no ill will. I wish them all well. And like I said, if they are really serious about sitting down and having a discussion with regards to traffic, I'd be more than happy to have that discussion. Because whatever the solution is, it is going to require money. It's going to require money to be approved in this parliament. Because as the old political saying goes, it takes cash to care. You can tell people you feel your pain all you want. It still takes cash to care. With that, Madam Speaker, I will be voting no against this motion, not because I don't believe there is a problem, but because this, in my opinion, which has been confirmed in the remarks by the mover, has just been one to just score political points. And if the opposition wants to really hold its government account, it really needs to do a better job than that. Because I can tell you, having sat there, having more opposition experience than every member except two of them, that's not the work of the opposition. And if the goal of the opposition is also the government in waiting to return back to this side, they have to do a better job than what they're doing. This is not the politics we want for the Cayman Islands, and this is the kind of politics that we need to make sure never finds foot in this country. There ain't no garrison politics and that kind of stuff. We're all Caymanians here. And many people have come here and worked hard, integrated in our community, and have become part of the fabric. This house, the diversity of this house, have now reflected the type of Cayman Islands that we have. And if the government, or sorry, if the opposition in the next session files a motion or even refiles something similar that really genuinely looks to solve the problem, I'll be the first to support it, and I'll be the first to lobby my colleagues to support it. Madam Speaker, thank you all very much.
The Honourable Minister for Health and Wellness.
Yeah, just the rest. I don't know. Just to clear it off. Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I know the day has been long, and the motion that is before us that we're lending our contributions to, I don't want to belabor it anymore, but I think it would not have been fitting for me as the Minister of Health and Wellness to not have lent some sort of commentary to this motion as placed before this Honourable House as private members motion number 7 of 2022-2023, implementing the recommendations in the 2020 report from the Committee on Vehicle Imports and Transportation. Madam Speaker, a number of things have already been stated by my colleagues and, of course, the opposition. And it is so interesting to avoid repeating a lot that has already been said, but more so fitting to highlight the fact that this is a report that obviously was prepared by my predecessor, who was the councillor then of the Premier, my constituent, my dear friend, and someone that I worked tirelessly with in the community back in the day. And it's interesting now, as the Minister of Health and Wellness, and also the elected member for Prospect, being a part of this unique and dynamic government, independently elected, and in 18, 19 months, what I've been able to deliver with the support of my colleagues is at least 2 roads, and not just a report. We're all about solving the issues. We're all, as an independent team, not talk. We're action. We're not waiting to the eve of 2025 to deal with roads. I got elected because I gave the people my word, my promise that they will be taken care of. I also gave them assurance that I would work with an elected government and anyone that I know would allow me to do good by and for the people of Prospect. I can recall personally volunteering and making presentations to the then 2 elected members for Red Bay and Prospect, volunteering to go and stand up at Poindexter with the traffic police to assist in people coming off of Shamrock Road, clogging up the roads within the Prospect constituency and Red Bay, to assist and allowing people to just continue the free flowing of the roads there. I even can recall making the suggestion of traffic wardens to give the retirees hope, jobs, opportunities as well. Where has it fallen? It would have appeared to have fallen on deaf ear, but yet tonight, in this season, we are standing here deliberating on this motion that really is truly full of theatrics, and like my colleagues have stated, trying to earn points. I am here to be as concise, as open, transparent, and honest to the people of Prospect as I can be. And this is why I support doing it properly. Our country has lacked proper vision, infrastructure upgrades for decades. As my colleague stated in his presentation, 8 weeks, 88% of the first month of 2021, the 88% of the budget was placed on roads. Where was Prospect in that? All we got was patching of holes. That's all. Out of all of that, what can the people of Prospect say that they got? Let me tell you something, though. In 18 months, the people got more than 12 drains in one area alone, Bedrock Circle, in the back of Raven Avenue, that saved their homes. That was becoming, unfortunately, a possible another Randike. We've addressed the swales in Paradise Palms. People know it as the Frank Hall Homes. I am still working closely with the Minister of Education and Roads to deal with our children standing on the road at top of Adventure Street. You're talking about the extension of that bypass? I am in full support of it. But it has to be collective. It is a disaster waiting to happen with the children standing up there in the morning. This is what these reports do. Raven Avenue, Spots Newlands, people that fall in the constituency of Prospect will know that I am not just wind. I'm a woman of action because I'm working with the minister who has never, ever not acted. He could have acted a little quicker though, but I'm thankful. Why? Because we all have established the fact that we have needs to meet our constituents. And it seems not seems, let me take that back. It is quite obvious for almost 2 decades, Prospect's roads have been neglected. I have personally driven through those roads with the NRA crews and the member. Poindexter, Patrick's Island does not fall in Prospect. That's Red Bay. I can't even vote for myself. But still, they're all neighboring roads that when you talk about garrison politics, but yet we can say we're all one people. It is blatant what was happening previously. Mahogany and mangrove, dogwood got paved, and you're now working, your crews are now working in Raven. It pained my heart. And now when you see reports stating how much money was spent in a short time to fool the people, well, I tell you what, the people didn't get it wrong in Prospect. Because I am showing we will work. We will address the culverts. We will deal with the swales. Whatever input is needed for future development, amendments to planning law to assist us in infrastructure improvements will be done. This is not no political promise because you say this is an adversarial place. This is a place of democracy. This is a place for us to speak to our people. This is to let them know what we are doing for them collectively. And I totally agree that if this motion being tabled today or being debated today was because of the Pirates Week shutdown, well, at least one thing we can show to the people of Prospect that my predecessor did was a report. Where it will go, not by me. I cannot support it. Why? Because we are already working on it. It's proven. The people in Prospect are seeing it. We are all living in this country together. The effects that traffic has on people's lives, their mental health, it is known to have serious effects on type 2 diabetes, adrenaline rush, heart attacks and strokes. I can only imagine what those poor children and families go through every morning. And it has to stop, but it's no political game. This is factual. And this government is committed to living up to our promise, but doing it properly. If the people have proper public transport, I can assure you, me myself would have taken it for the first year after getting into office. My car broke down. My husband and I carpooled. And I know that we got accustomed to jumping in our cars and moving when we want. And I saw the challenges. He being on shift, me not knowing, what my hours would be. I get it. I get it. But this is what this government is committed to doing. Making sure we look at it as a 360 approach. And this is why the multiple NRA meetings throughout the districts have been had. This government has been very open with keeping the lines of communication open with their people and addressing the issues that can be dealt with now. I have people that are coming up to me, and I've personally driven into the Prospect constituency after rains. Places that were flood no longer flood. Because we did the simple thing of listening to the people, taking action and not just blowing smoke. But the biggest thing we have is making sure that we have in our future roads development storm water management, soft shoulders wide enough so that their bus stops can be actually placed safely off the road to protect our children, to protect our future. And this is no longer the place to only talk about it because it sounds good. People want a government that is action-driven, and you are seeing the beginning of that in 19 months with what we have done. Bipartisan politics is the key of success. I have no clue of what it is like to be in the opposition. And for those who have actually had that experience, congratulations to them. But I have a job, no matter what side of the aisle, in this noble house and in this position, to serve the people. Or at least make yourself available as often as possible, but most importantly, listen to them. Provide the resources, and do not just talk for political points, because sooner or later it will come to roost. I give you my word. I would be concise and to the point. I cannot support this motion because this is already a work in progress, and in a lot of the areas, the report card is in and it can be proven. It is only up and up from here with what improvements we will make holistically and not piecemeal to try and gain political votes. So, Madam Speaker, I thank you for your indulgence, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm a woman about principle, facts, and being concise. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does the mover wish to exercise his right of reply?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I will try to exercise restraint in my reply. But, Madam Speaker, I struggle really to know where to start, because we have been back, round, front, center on this whole issue this afternoon, and quite frankly, clearly stirred up a hornet's nest I didn't anticipate. But, Madam Speaker, I will try to summarize things. It's clear to me this motion is not being accepted. Disappointed, really, in the minister's response in not accepting it. He, at the outset, said he thought the motion was premature. Those were his words. And it was one-sided. And I have to say what? Premature? And we just spent the last 3 hours debating this and saying what a problem we have. There's nothing more relevant that we have discussed here today than this. There's nothing more pertinent right now. Madam Speaker, in rejecting it, the minister made reference to 3 points or three things that I was recommending with regard to the recommendations of the committee. Madam Speaker, I made no such recommendations. Madam Speaker, what I did do was give 3 reasons why I said I would not make specific recommendations. And that's where I went to. So the minister was misheard, didn't hear, I don't know what, but it was just dead wrong in terms of what I had to say. But Madam Speaker, I listened to everybody's speeches here this afternoon and their contribution to the debate. And honestly, I thank everyone who got up and spoke. Because one thing has become clear to me, we all agree, there's a problem. And I said so at the outset, I hope we can all agree. We have a problem. And I had hoped that by asking government to consider the recommendations of the committee that was put together in 2020 and the report that was prepared, that it would find favor. I had no idea, no knowledge of what was going on within the minister's ministry with regard to this. But he acknowledges there is a report to come or some document to come next month that will outline what the government's plans are. And he's already admitted a lot of what's in this report is already in their report. So I don't know what would be the real issue in them saying, well, we'll accept the report, we'll see if there's anything else in there that we can include in there, in our plan that we are bringing forth. The Minister of Tourism, in his debate, he talked about moving jobs to the eastern districts. Made that a big part, spent a lot of time talking about that. Okay, that may be a point we need to consider. Let's add it to the list. Let's do that. And took exception, I think, really to my criticism with regard to, I mean, my statement really was with regard to public transport, was that we need to get a proper public transport system in place. But I think what really irritated him was the fact that I criticized the level of criticism at 18 months delay, because we know when we left there was an RFP that was ready to go. And that was the whole point of my discussion, of my contribution. Now, I want to turn to a couple of things the comment by the Deputy Premier and the figures he raised with me with regard to what I said were the budget excess in car duties or vehicle charges. And I'd say to the Minister, I don't have the figures here with me. I would like to go back and look at where I got the numbers from. I didn't just pull numbers out of the air, but I will look and try to find out where I got my numbers from and let him know how I came up to that figure. And I won't be able to do that until I can get home or back into the office to do that. But he also went to great expense, Madam Speaker, on this article that appeared in CNS. On the 21st of October, the usually biased Cayman News Service, titled, OAG finds pre-election abuse of cash, of public cash. Abuse. Okay? 21st of October. And the minister read from it. The article says, Auditor General Sue Winspear and her team found during an audit of the NRA that, and she said more than 11 million was spent between the announcement of the early election and the day of the vote. Auditor General said that this could lead to political abuse of public funds during the election campaign. The operative word, she said, could. Did she say she found any abuse? No. Absolutely not. And there's a reason she didn't say so, because there was none. What happened in this case in this period leading up to the election was that there was a tremendous amount of unspent funds in the 2020 budget. Because of the lockdown, work did not continue on all the roadworks that were undergoing. And we took a decision to move funds out of 2020, put it into the first quarter of 2021 to allow the roadworks to continue, because we knew opening up, the issues and problems with the traffic would continue and only resume. And that was the whole reason. But yet still, this kind of garbage is spewed about the place, as if there was something untoward being said and something untoward being done. Nothing of the sort.
And the election was brought forward 6 weeks.
And what?
The election was brought forward 6 weeks.
Yeah, and the elections were brought forward 6 weeks too. So, Madam Speaker, this is only introduced to try and discredit us and to make political mileage out of it. Pardon? And I've heard several members, they've now imputed, Madam Speaker, that somehow the whole genesis for this motion has to do with the gridlock that we experienced in the Pirates Fest. Nothing further from the truth, Madam Speaker. Really? I was simply made mention as an example. It certainly brought the issues to light. Come on, people, be reasonable. That's just utter nonsense. Madam Speaker, as I listen to everything tonight, there is one thing that is for sure that comes out of the debate from the motion. We know there's a problem. And my hope and prayer is that, well, I have to say it has been so thoroughly and adequately vented here this evening with all the rhetoric, and so at some point it even sounded like people were campaigning for re-election. But you're right, it probably should start from now. Anyway, at the very least, there is an acknowledgement, and I think agreement amongst the 19 of us here this evening, that there is a problem, and that I hope now that we will see some movement and that things will actually be done. If I can have accomplished that today, and with this motion, even though I'm disappointed it was not accepted, then I think I will have accomplished what I set out to do. We got to deal with it. We got to get moving. And so with that, Madam Speaker, I thank you and wish everyone a pleasant evening.
Question now is that the government consider, as a matter of urgency, reviewing the recommendations in the report and publishing a response to the recommendations, setting out which recommendations will be implemented. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against?
No.
Division, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Honourable Wayne Panton.
No.
Honourable Christopher Saunders.
No.
Honourable Kenneth Bryan.
No.
Honourable Sabrina Turner.
No.
Honourable Johanny Ebanks.
No.
Honourable Andre Ebanks.
No.
Honourable Borny Bush.
No.
Honourable Juliana O'Connor Connolly.
No.
Honorable Dwayne Seymour.
No.
Mr. Isaac Rankin.
No.
Ms. Heather Barton.
No.
Honorable McKeever Bush.
No.
Honorable Roy McTaggart.
Aye.
Mr. Joseph Hugh.
Aye.
Honorable Sir Alden McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Moses Kirkernel.
Aye.
Ms. Barbara Connolly.
Aye.
Mr. David White.
Aye.
We have a total of 6 ayes and 12 noes. Therefore, the noes have it. This motion has failed to pass.
Private member motion number 4 of 2022. Motion to create a task force on North Sound water sports operation and a moratorium on the granting of new wildlife interaction zone licenses. To be moved by the elected member for West Bay West.
The elected member for West Bay West.
Madam Speaker, I rise to move private member's motion number 4, 2022-2023, which reads as follows. Whereas for years there have been concerns over water sports operations in the North Sound, which the member for West Bay Central had identified and began work on that matter. And whereas there is continuing evidence of local water sports operators being put in a less competitive position and disadvantaged in an industry that was built by Caymanians, be it therefore resolved that the government considers setting up a task force inclusive of a member of the Department of Environment, the Cayman Islands Coast Guard, and local persons of knowledge with our snorkeling and fishing industries to address the various issues affecting local water sports operators. Be it therefore further resolved that the government considers placing a moratorium on the granting of new wildlife interaction zone licenses until such time as the task force has reported its findings back to government.
Is there a seconder to the motion?
Madam Speaker, I second the motion number 4.
The motion has been moved and seconded, and is now open for debate. Does the mover of the motion wish to speak thereto, or does the mover intend to move an amendment to the motion at this time?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move an amendment to private member's motion number 4, 2022-2023, in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 25.1 and 2, I, the Honorable W. McKeever Bush, elected member for West Bay West, seek to move the following amendment to private member's motion number 4, 2022-2023, that the motion be amended by inserting at the end of the be it therefore resolved section the words within 9 months. The new resolved section will now read, be it therefore further resolved that the government considers placing a moratorium on the granting of new wildlife interaction zone licenses until such time as the task force has reported its findings back to government within 9 months.
The amendment has been moved. Does the mover wish to speak on the amendment? Sorry. Is there someone who's going to second the amendment?
Madam Speaker, I second the amendment of private members' motion number 4.
The amendment has been moved. Does the mover wish to speak on the amendment?
Madam Speaker, I rather speak fully to the now amended motion, or will be speak to the amendment. So the amendment can be part, yes, I will. Yes. Briefly, Madam Speaker, the amendment seeks to lengthen the time from the original of 5 months to 9 months to give that much more time to government to be able to, and the task force, to get things done. And as far as the moratorium would give them that much more time to look at the situation and therefore hopefully bring the moratorium.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment?
Sorry, Madam Speaker. Oh.
Does anyone else wish to speak on the amendment? Otherwise, we'll move to vote on the amendment. Does the mover to the amendment wish to reply?
No, Madam Speaker.
The question is that the motion be amended as follows: that the government considers placing a moratorium on the granting of new wildlife interaction zone licenses until such time as the task force has reported its findings back to government within 9 months. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. The amendment to government motion number 4 of 2022-2023, private member's motion, is duly passed. The motion as amended is now open for debate. Does the mover of the motion wish to speak on the amended motion?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the motion seeks to address matters connected to the water sports business by doing 2 things: setting up a task force that knows the business and the issues they face and come up with solutions and report back to government in 9 months. And the motion asks that a moratorium be put in place so that no new licenses is granted while that task force is working. Madam Speaker, there are many complex issues to that situation that can only be addressed if government set up a task force to sift through these long-felt issues of Caymanian ownership of operations and sandbar capacity. As I say, there are many issues, Madam Speaker. Too much, I think, for this Parliament to sit down as a debating, or to debate and try to get it right through that. The best thing to do is to get a task force set up with knowledgeable people, sit down, go through all the issues, and come back to government. So Parliament should resolve to establish a task force or working group to consider the issues and consult with relevant stakeholders in regard to the WIS and the North Sound water sport licenses and such task force to report to Cabinet within 9 months with recommendations which will benefit Caymanians operating in this sector of the water sports industry. Establish a moratorium on new viz licenses for 1 year from the 1st of February 23, with the following exceptions to that moratorium. A new license application by an existing operator to replace a license that was previously held from February the 1st, 2020 onwards. And B, to allow, or allowance should be made for a viz license to be temporarily transferred. These are considerations that they should make, to transfer to another vessel or a new replacement license granted if the vessel licensed is being permanently replaced. These are things that the government would take into consideration, whether the government takes that on itself or whether the government puts the task force together and be guided by the task force work. Madam Speaker, for decades, the provisions of North Sound snorkeling and boat tours has been to preserve of multi-generational Caymanians. And despite having the history, the experience and investment in that business, these Caymanians now find their livelihoods threatened by circumstances which require attention by this House and by government through informed advice. Madam Speaker, the severe financial impact of the COVID travel restrictions has significantly weakened those established businesses. The past 9 months has not been a sufficient period for these businesses to fully recover and pay off the debt accumulated during the travel restrictions. Visitor arrivals have not fully recovered, and yet cruise visitors' arrivals are forecast to drop significantly in the coming years. New businesses are being created and granted wildlife interaction zone licenses without any requirement for qualifications, experience, or even public liability insurance, some of them. Ad hoc opportunistic businesses are popping up, creating further oversupply and driving down prices, threatening the livelihood of the established operators. The same way that anyone, Madam Speaker, with a car can't go out and offer taxi services on Friday nights, simply having access to a boat should not entitle someone to offer boat trips on the weekend, just so. Commercial operations by inexperienced boaters now frequently create safety hazards to guests and other boats, as well as environmental hazards to our shallow waters and our precious reefs. Despite the need, Madam Speaker, being recognized for many years, there is still no practical way of equitably managing the capacity of the Stingray City sandbar, with the result being a Wild West free-for-all, overcrowding, and race to the bottom pricing. Therefore, Madam Speaker, it is now time for consideration of regulations, restrictions, and licensing requirements to be introduced for the North Sound Water Sports Zone, consisting of the fringe reef and all the water areas inside the reef. And those considerations, Madam Speaker, could include segmentation of the water sports trade and business license to specify a North Sound Zone water sports business license. There could be a more restrictive definition of Caymanian in relation to ownership of a business holding a North Sound Zone water sports license. And there could be a requirement for a higher than 60% Caymanian share ownership for limited companies holding a North Sound zone water sports licenses, and further, a requirement for a minimum percentage of Caymanian shareholders having an active operational participation in a business holding a North Sound zone water sports license. Madam Speaker, this is what is happening in the North Sound. And Madam Speaker, before I move on, I want to thank you for all the work that you put in and before you was appointed as Speaker or elected as Speaker into this issue. Because I know you grew up in West Bay, you grew up in Boston Bay, and you grew up being able to go into North Sound. Your father operated there. Your grandfather was a good fisherman. You know the area. You know what North Sound is. And therefore, you had a good handle on what to do. Madam Speaker, some of what is happening in the water sports industry. There are people from overseas. They come and they see the opportunity and they have money and they offer our Caymanians 10, 15, maybe sometimes less percent. And that is to a Caymanian, Madam Speaker, a Caymanian operation who has been in the business and has clientele already, and so they can offer people they already have. I imagine what they offer. If that's only 5, 10, 15%, and that person already has clientele, I imagine what they offer a Caymanian who have nothing but a little boat, or might not even be a boat. And I want to say, Madam Speaker, we know that these situations exist. They not only exist in water sports, they exist in many other areas in Cayman. Madam Speaker, I am not about making any loss of a possible investment of a Caymanian, regardless of how little it is. But, Madam Speaker, that is one of the issues that I hope the task force will deal with. But, Madam Speaker, as I said, I'm not about seeing anybody who can get a chance for investment go down the drain. But we need to ensure that the local person who has taken on a partner, with that partner having a majority, we must ensure that the local person is safeguarded, and that is not happening. They're taking on a partner, and they're getting very little out of it. And Madam Speaker, I'm a free market person. But, Madam Speaker, and we've said this often in this House too, there are certain businesses that Caymanians can do that should be left for the preserve of our local people. Now, I've traveled to the Bahamas and other countries, and they set out a list of small businesses that is only left for locals, meaning local citizens. If they come from the moon and they're a citizen, so be it. They are a citizen. But what is happening, that's not what's happening now. Years ago, the LCCL was created, and they had to advertise, and there was millions of dollars needed. But there are businesses today that Caymanians can and are able to reach that they don't need a partner. They don't need a partner. What they do need are regulations from government and assistance from government to ensure that they move along. And government has set up through small business operations safeguards and assistance. And I think that and I'm hoping that that is one of the things the task force will do. As I said, I didn't want to come here and make the world believe that I know everything about everything. No. And I don't think anybody else in this House knows everything about everything. So that's why I wanted to set up a task force, as I said, with somebody from environment, somebody from Coast Guard, people like Ronnie Anglin, Captain Eugene, different people like that, even Adrian Briggs, if he's able to. These people have knowledge in our local water sports operations. Boats are coming in, Madam Speaker. They are coming in. Beautiful boats. No longer, though, and we must not think this just because you're local, you can just go in a bath pan and you can take tourists out. No. The traveling public today are very discerning and wanting the best when they come. They want to go aboard and be comfortable in a good boat. The best that they can get it. And sometimes they want it cheap too. So our people got to understand that people not just coming to say, oh, this is the time that the island, the time forgot. So, you know, they want to see this like back in the 60s. That was the people living in the 60s. But not today. The discerning tourists want the best facilities to utilize. They want good hotels. They want good hotel rooms. They want safe taxis and clean taxis and good boats to go touring in, water sports, snorkeling. They just don't think that people just want to come here, oh, this is an island, and you know, the local, you hear the talk around the place is saying, oh, they want us like how it was in the 50s. Oh, yeah? They're gone. That traveling public gone long time ago. Their grandchildren now are the ones coming. They're the ones that want the best. They want the best. So we just can't up and have anybody in any kind of thing operating and dealing with our tourists. So, Madam Speaker, that's the stuff that the North Sound Task Force would be able to look into, make recommendations. And, Madam Speaker, I am saying about the protection. As I said, I am a free market person. But we have to recognize that there are certain things that our local people need protection on. You got Clinton Ebanks, who's a long time. I saw one thing there today asking if he's still operating in a catamaran, and that's what they want. People, I think they say they were on an island, right? These people that they're naming as people that they know are quality and will give quality service. So we don't need to sit and think that those people don't need protection from the big 84-foot Hatteras that comes in. They do. They need somebody is fronting for somebody. And as I said, I am not about stopping anyone from making a dollar, honest dollar. But we have to safeguard them. Can't be they're going to get satisfied with anything. Madam Speaker, the losses that some of those people have taken have been tremendous. I mean, I've been talking to them and I have knowledge of it for a long time, talking to them recently, particularly since the pandemic. But during the pandemic, Madam Speaker, some people in the water sports North Sound operations lost their investment, had to sell their house, had to sell, I know one company sold 5 boats, sizable company, local company, to keep their business alive. Sold their 2 houses, sold 5 boats. So you imagine that's a sizable operation. But they still had to do it during the pandemic or while the pandemic was on to keep their business alive. Yes, a foreign investor with a Caymanian partner would have lost during the pandemic as well in the business during the lockdown. But that foreign national with that 50-foot brand new Hatteras, 84-foot Hatteras Big Catamaran, etc., etc. Them, because of their wealth and their ability to sustain their business, didn't take the blow the way the Caymanian operator had to endure that blow. We have to understand that these are things that are happening. We have younger Caymanians now too who want to get into the business. Troy Leacock and different ones who have not been in the business a couple of years, but they were not the traditional ones. But they have been involved. And so the different mindset, whereas my stepfather, who operated in the North Sound, the Captain Gleasons, the Mr. Asley E. Banks, Captain Erdis, Captain Marvin, that age group is gone. But they were the ones that started the business, Captain Crosby E. Banks and all those different persons, Alfonso E. Banks, Alan E. Banks. And there are others also, of course, you know, people operate in East End. I think some people operate out in South Sound. I only know, and North Side, yes. And I only know most of the people I'm associated with, SBN grew up with, of course. But as I say, them all the ones built the industry, kept it alive. Today, the North Sound is ram-packed with boats. Go to that sandbar. I mean, I don't get overboard and play around, no stingrays. I'm not a fool. But the people do. People do. And it's an attraction. But if you see some of the videos and you see the amount of people that are there, I think we have reached a point where we have to put something in place. And I not say how many boats, where they parked, all this. That's left up to the task force. But there has to be some control, or else what we want, what we have, what we love, that North Sound will have some erosion. And so we just cannot continue to just leave it alone. And we have to let those persons, I'm not going to say so that out of greediness, there could be free market believers like I am, but some of them are so strong in their belief that and in their independence of being a Caymanian, that they feel that, let me do what I want to do. But you can't do that. There has to be, like everything else, some rules, some regulations, some carrying capacity for the North Sound, and the protection. Madam Speaker, I will stop there because it is getting late. And hopefully the House will accept the motion.
Does any other member wish to speak? The Honorable Minister for Tourism and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be really, really quick. Just to rise on behalf of the government as Minister of Tourism to say that we will be giving support to this motion as it's in line with the broad outcome 10 in our strategic policy statement under number 4 that says encouraging stronger Caymanian participation in the industry. And 4B also says to promote greater Caymanian ownership of the tourism-related businesses. Obviously, there will be some things that have to be worked out by way of mechanisms in respect to the spirit of the motion, but it's one in principle that we support, and we're willing to move forward by putting together the necessary things to accomplish the spirit of the motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I hope that the opposition will be in support as well.
Does any other member wish the Honourable Deputy Speaker?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to give some contribution to motion I second. Seconded private members motion number 4. And thank you, Madam Speaker, for the work you've done on this. I know we spoke about it before. In fact, I even thought we were supposed to bring it together at some point. So I know the work you've done in it. Obviously, the member for West Bay West has done such an eloquent job on presenting this case, and there's not much more than you can actually say. But I thought I'd mention, as the former Minister of Environment, I had the pleasure of going through this same thing in 2019, 2020, where we did file to place a temporary moratorium on the issuances of license, the wildlife interaction zone, or with licenses. Madam Speaker, as said earlier by the member from West Bay West, in terms of us protecting our people, there must be something that us as politicians, they elected all 19 of us to protect their interests. And I know and to protect their livelihoods. For some people in the public, I know you can hear them screaming protectionism or otherwise, but you know, who are we building for? And if we can't protect something for Caymanians, why are we even here? So, Madam Speaker, these Caymanians, as mentioned by the member earlier, very knowledgeable in this business and with their offerings. And as a government, we need to stand for something. I don't know why it seems so hard, as I've said, when a government stand up and say they're going to protect certain things for Caymanians. In fact, you know, it seems like a bad word for persons who don't really understand what we're trying to do. And I look across to Florida with the Indians there, that the casinos are placed squarely in their hands because of indigenous Americans. I look to other countries, even in Jamaica, as an area that is protected for indigenous Caymanians. Why is it such a big problem when legislators, politicians in Cayman say they need to protect things for Caymanians? It seems like a big, big problem. It's less of us now than them, really, than the transient people that are here. And we are now the majority of the minority, or the minority of the majority. But I'm sure we're not the majority. So I say this to say that in 2019, just to show one of the main reasons why I second this motion, was I did a statement in this honorable house, which should have been public. And on the 5th of December 2019, and Madam Speaker, the statement in this honorable house has been noted after numerous observations and complaints made to the department and the Tourism Ministry, the Minister of Environment, in consultation with the Minister of Tourism, after careful consideration and investigation in regards to the wildlife interaction zone, and especially the Stingray City, has decided to place a temporary moratorium and cap the amount of boats and passengers that visit on a daily basis. Mr. Speaker, sorry, Madam Speaker, I say that to say that at the time it was Mr. Speaker, and I'm reading the actual, it's a little confusing. But currently the licensed vehicles are not permitted to carry passengers into sandbar areas of wildlife interaction zones after 2 p.m. on weekends and 3 p.m. on public holidays, etc. And the ministry knows the efforts that have been made by the DOE and the current constraints it has on them. So I've teamed up with the Coast Guard attachment to assist us in upholding this moratorium and capping policy. And we are quite confident that these new measures put in place will not only give clear guidelines to the users, but to add a sense of safety and security to the visitors to our shores, whilst creating a better and more intimate experience. So it goes on to say more, but Madam Speaker, as I said, it wouldn't be long. We have to stand up as politicians and unite as one when it comes to protecting things for Caymanians. And I am one who's not afraid to say that. I'm not looking behind me when I say it to see who is upset when I say it. And I thank the honourable member from West Bay West for asking me to second this motion, and I commit this to the House. Thank you.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I shall be even shorter than the member for Bodden Town East. Madam Speaker, I rise to express my support for the motion at hand. I believe it is very much timely and would, I think, if handled and dealt with in the right way, go a long way towards resolving the issues that exist and have existed for some time within this industry. Madam Speaker, you know, despite the fact that the country is now reopened to tourism, we know that we are operating at a far lesser level of service and demand for the tourism services in terms of the numbers of people that are visiting our shores. I know the water sports operators, while they are operating at a much reduced level of demand. And I know that they are struggling to make things meet, you know, to eke out a living right now in this industry. And for many of them, it's all they know. And everything in their entire livelihood depends on this here. One gentleman who I count as a dear friend, I mean, I know he operating at less than 50% of what he had before, back in 2009, when everything went pear-shaped, or in 2020, when everything went pear-shaped with COVID-19. By all accounts, it is going to be a few years before tourism can really get back to the level which we had come to expect, with the vibrancy and the growth that was taking place. And while we are showing, you know, quite significant increases next year, we're still projected to be at about 70% of what, in terms of stayover tourists, what it was like for, you know, in 2019. That's, you know, 4 years after, you know, that's 4 years later. What's that? Absolutely. So I support the motion, and I think it's important, and I like the idea of including the people or persons from the areas that you mentioned, from the DOE, Coast Guard, local persons of knowledge with the snorkeling, fishing industries, to address the issues. And they're the ones affected, most of all, and they're the ones that will have the answers. So we need to put together the right committee, and we need to make sure that whatever recommendations that they come up with, that one, they can reasonably be implemented, that they can achieve the objectives, and what is probably most important of all is that they are fair and applicable to all, so that there's no one who can claim any special treatment or any special advantage. We all want them to succeed in this industry, and here's an opportunity to help them to do that. So I commend the motion as well, and I think I probably do speak on behalf of the opposition with it, that we do support the motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Does any other member wish to speak? Does any other member wish to speak? Does the mover wish to exercise his right of reply?
Madam Speaker, thank you. I think all that needs to be said at this time has been said, and I only want to thank my colleagues the member for Bordentown East, for seconding the motion, and certainly want to thank the other members of the government, in particular the Minister of Tourism, the Honorable Minister of Commerce, and the Honorable Minister of Heritage and Culture for their continued support of the issue, and thanks to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition and his colleagues for their support. As I said to the House, I didn't ask for that, but maybe the government will take that into consideration. And certainly I will, if they overheard, I will certainly say so to them that it was asked. I certainly would hope we would get to see it at least, whether it's something that we brought back to the House to be tabled, or whether it's something that is passed out to us as members of the House so that we are aware of what the recommendations are ourselves. So I think, thank you very much for raising that, because I think it's a good idea for that to be done. But I do certainly want to thank the government, thank my colleagues here who have not spoken, but of course have given their support. And not just on these issues. Most of us understand the issues, all of us, opposition and government, as has said so many times this evening, we know the things that are troubling us. We just need to come to the right consensus amongst ourselves. Thank you very much. Continue. Go on, I said it was, member.
The question now is that the government considers setting up a task force inclusive of a member of the Department of Environment, the Cayman Islands Coast Guard, and local persons of knowledge with our snorkeling and fishing industries to address the various issues affecting local water sports operators. Be it therefore further resolved that the government considers placing a moratorium on the granting of new wildlife interaction zone licenses until such time as the task force has reported its findings back to the government within 9 months. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Private member's motion number 4 of 2022-2023 is duly passed as amended.
No, we still carried it through.
Private member motion number 6 of 2022, motion on allowing equity release mortgages.
1 minute, Madam Clerk. The Honorable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker, we recognize the lateness of the hour. Madam Speaker, let's ask a little recess. Okay? A little 5-minute recess.
Members, we will adjourn. We will suspend for
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Proceedings are resumed. The Honorable Deputy Premier.
Yeah, Madam Speaker, thank you. Just I did a little bit of house cleaning. Madam Speaker, we recognize the lateness of the hour, and we realize that we have ended today despite the challenges on a positive note. We do recognize that this is a festive season, and although we had wanted to start Parliament early tomorrow, and we'd have finished extremely early, in recognizing that the Parliament staff have their Christmas function tomorrow, the members think it has just been best for us to adjourn the House until 10 a.m. on Monday. So with that said, I just move the adjournment of this Honorable House until 10 a.m. on Monday.
Madam Speaker, before you put the motion, hitherto, and when I say that, ever since I've been in this House, Thursdays were set aside solely for private members' business unless government had an emergency. And so they had to deal with something. The whole of Thursday, private members' motions, private members' questions, and that would take up. And then, if we finish, then government business came afterwards. I think the Business Committee need to relook at that situation, because when we put on, 10 and 12 reports, important reports they are, but when we put them on, it does take up a lot of time. And so that's what I see. One of the things that I would like to see get back to Thursdays being fully to deal with private members' business, and then if and when that finished, to deal with any government business.
I thank the member for those comments. Those members who are present on the Business Committee can take note of the member from West Bay West suggestions or concerns. The question is that this House do now adjourn until 10 a.m. Monday, the 12th of December. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. This Honourable House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. on Monday, the 12th of December.